I thought delivering Chinese food to apartment 4B would be quick and easy. I had no idea I was walking into someone's carefully planned nightmare. A few years back, I worked nights for Grubhub to pay off my student loans. The work was steady in my area since I lived near a university campus with tons of apartment complexes. Most deliveries were straightforward college kids ordering late-night food, young professionals too tired to cook. One Thursday around 9 p.m., I got an order for a large amount of Chinese food from a popular spot near campus. The order was going to a complex I'd been to dozens of times before. Nothing seemed unusual. I picked up 4 bags of food way more than one person would normally order and headed to the address. When I got to the complex, I found the building and went inside. The order said apartment 4B, 4th floor. I took the elevator up, walked down the dimly lit hallway, and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I checked my phone and the customer had left a note I hadn't seen before. Doors unlocked. Please leave on kitchen counter. This seemed odd, but people occasionally did this if they were in the shower or on a call. I carefully opened the door and called out, Grubhub delivery. The apartment was dark except for a faint light coming from what looked like the kitchen area. I stepped inside, heading toward the light. That's when I heard the door slam shut behind me. I spun around and saw a man standing there, not by the door I'd just come through, but emerging from a dark hallway to my left. Thanks for bringing my food inside, he said, but his tone wasn't grateful. It was cold. I immediately said I was just leaving the food and needed to go. But then I heard another voice, a woman's voice, coming from the dark hallway. You're not going anywhere yet. My heart was pounding. There were at least 2 people here. The apartment was dark, and I was trapped inside. I dropped the food and ran for the door, but it wouldn't open. Someone had locked it from the inside with a deadbolt that required a key from both sides. I started banging on the door, screaming for help. The man started walking toward me, saying they just wanted to talk, that they had a business opportunity for me. I pulled out my phone to call 911, and the man suddenly rushed at me. I dodged him and ran into the kitchen area, which thankfully had a window. I could see other apartment windows across the way people were home. I started screaming out the window while calling 911. The woman started yelling at the man, saying they needed to let me go, that this wasn't the plan. They started arguing with each other. Within minutes, I heard sirens. The man finally unlocked the door, and I burst out into the hallway. Police arrived and arrested both of them. Turns out they'd been luring delivery drivers into that apartment, which wasn't even theirs. They'd somehow gotten a key. They'd been robbing drivers and stealing their cars. I was the first one who'd managed to cause enough of a scene that they got caught. I quit doing deliveries that same night. No amount of money is worth walking into someone's trap. The house seemed normal when I pulled up. It was the voice coming through the doorbell camera that made my blood run cold. Last summer, I was delivering for Postmates while trying to save money for a car repair. I mainly worked weekday evenings in my suburban neighborhood where I'd lived my whole life. I thought I knew the area well enough to feel safe. One Tuesday evening around 7:30, I accepted an order from a local sandwich shop. The delivery address was only about 2 miles from my house, in a neighborhood I'd driven through countless times. The order was for 2 sandwiches and chips, pretty standard. I picked up the food and drove to the address. It was a small, single-story ranch house with an overgrown front yard. There was a car in the driveway, so someone was clearly home. I grabbed the food and walked up to the front door. As I approached, I noticed they had one of those Ring doorbell cameras. Before I could even knock, a voice came through the camera speaker. Just leave it there. Don't ring the bell. It was a man's voice, quiet and oddly tense. Okay, no problem, I said, setting the bag down. Wait, the voice said. Did you bring napkins? I checked the bag. Yeah, there are napkins in here from the restaurant. How many? The voice asked. This was a weird question, but I opened the bag to check. Looks like maybe 5 or 6. There was a long pause. Then the voice said something that made my stomach drop. "That's not enough. You need to go back and get more napkins. At least 20. Something about the way he said it, the specific number, the urgency in his voice, it didn't feel like a request about napkins anymore. I told him I couldn't go back to the restaurant for napkins, that he could contact Postmates support if there was an issue. "Please," the voice said, now sounding desperate. "I need you to go back. Right now? Don't ask questions, just go." Then I heard something else in the background through the speaker, a woman's voice, very faint, saying what sounded like help. My entire body went cold. I asked if everything was okay in there. The man's voice came back, much more aggressive now. "Mind your own business and get the napkins like I asked." I backed away from the door and immediately called 911 from my car. I told them something was seriously wrong at that address, that I'd heard a woman who sounded like she was in distress. The dispatcher told me to leave the area and that they were sending officers. I drove away but parked a few streets over, waiting. About 10 minutes later, I saw multiple police cars rush past me toward that street. I learned later that evening from a local news alert that police had rescued a woman who'd been held against her will in that house for 3 days. The man was arrested. The police told me later that he'd been ordering food multiple times a day, probably trying to maintain an appearance of normalcy to neighbors. They think he was trying to send me away when the woman tried to call for help through the Ring camera speaker. I still deliver food occasionally, but now I trust my gut. If something feels off, even if it's just a weird request about napkins, I take it seriously. Nobody should have been working in that office building on a Sunday at midnight. But someone was waiting for me on the 8th floor. I delivered for DoorDash for about a year, and I worked all kinds of crazy hours to maximize my earnings. Sunday late nights were surprisingly busy with people ordering food for the week ahead or just random cravings. One Sunday, close to midnight, I got an order for Thai food going to an office building downtown. The order was large, multiple entrees and appetizers, and the tip was generous, almost $25. I figured it was someone working late, maybe a startup team pulling an all-nighter. I picked up the food and drove to the address. The building was a typical mid-rise office tower, maybe 15 stories. When I arrived, the entire building was dark except for lights on what looked like the 8th floor. I tried the front door and it was locked, which made sense for that time of night. I called the customer's number. A woman answered immediately. "Oh good, you're here. I'll buzz you in. Take the elevator to the 8th floor and turn right. I'm in suite 804. The door buzzed and I went inside. The lobby was completely empty and silent. The only sound was my footsteps echoing on the tile floor. I got in the elevator and pressed 8. As the elevator rose, I started feeling uneasy. Why would someone be working this late on a Sunday? And why was only one floor lit up? The elevator dinged and the doors opened. The hallway was long and empty, with that eerie fluorescent lighting that makes everything look slightly green. I could see light coming from under the door of suite 804 at the far end. I walked down the hallway carrying the food. About halfway down, I heard a door open behind me. I turned and saw a man stepping out of suite 806, directly behind me. He wasn't looking at me, just standing in his doorway, but something about it felt staged. I kept walking toward 804, faster now. I knocked on the door. DoorDash delivery. No response. I knocked again, louder. Nothing. I called the customer's number. It rang and rang, but then I heard something that made my heart stop, a phone ringing inside suite 806, where the man was standing. The man pulled out a phone, looked at it, and declined the call. The ringing in my ears stopped at the exact same moment. I didn't wait another second. I dropped the food in the hallway and ran back toward the elevator, but the man was now walking toward me, blocking my path. He was smiling in a way that wasn't friendly at all. "Where's our food?" he asked. "I left it by the door," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to go." "You can't leave yet," he said. "We haven't paid you." "The payment was online," I said, backing away. I turned to look for the stairs. That's when the door to 804 opened, and the woman stepped out. "Come on, bring the food inside. We want to make sure the order's right." I ran for the stairwell door and shoved it open. I could hear footsteps behind me as I flew down 8 flights of stairs. I burst out into the lobby and ran for my car. I looked back and saw both of them standing in the building's entrance, watching me through the glass doors. I drove straight to the nearest police station and filed a report. They told me that building had been having issues with squatters breaking in and using empty office suites. The phone number on the account was a burner phone that was disconnected by the time they tried to trace it. I never accepted another delivery to an office building late at night, and I definitely never went inside one alone again. After the 4th time I delivered to the same wrong address in 1 week, I realized the mistakes weren't accidents. About 6 months ago, I was working for Uber Eats in my college town. I'd been doing deliveries for almost a year and thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. Over the span of 1 week, I kept getting orders that sent me to the same address, a small house on the outskirts of town near the highway. Each time, when I'd arrive, the customer would call me and say they'd entered the wrong address, that they were actually somewhere else nearby. The first time it happened, they said they were at the gas station 2 blocks away. I drove over and delivered the food to someone sitting in a car. The second time, 2 days later, same house address on the order, same phone call saying wrong address. This time they were at a fast food parking lot 3 blocks away. Different customer name, different voice, but same general script. The third time, I started to feel like something wasn't right. Same house, another call about wrong address, another nearby location. Each time it was a different person picking up the food. Each time they seemed nervous and would drive away quickly after I handed it over. By the 4th delivery in a week with the same address, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. Someone was using that house address deliberately, but why? The 4th time it happened, I decided to actually go to the house before calling the customer. I wanted to see what was there, why this address kept coming up. It was late evening, around 9 p.m. I pulled up to the house and it looked abandoned. The grass was dead, windows were dark, no cars in the driveway. There was a for sale sign in the yard that looked old and weathered. I sat in my car, staring at the house, trying to figure out what was going on. Then I saw movement in one of the windows. Just a shadow passing by. Someone was inside that house. My phone rang the customer, calling to tell me the real address. I didn't answer. Instead, I called the police non-emergency line and told them what had been happening, that I suspected something illegal was going on at this address. They told me to leave the area and that they'd send someone to check it out. I drove away and delivered the food to the address the customer had texted me, but I made a mental note of the person's appearance and car. 2 days later, I got a call from a detective. They'd raided that house and found it was being used as a drug distribution center. The people ordering food were dealers using the food delivery as cover to make their actual pickups look legitimate to anyone watching. Different people would order food, use that abandoned house address to make it seem like a normal delivery, then get the food and their actual product at a nearby location during what looked like a simple food delivery transaction. I had unknowingly been helping facilitate drug deals for a week. The detective thanked me for reporting it and said I might have to testify if the case went to trial. I still do food delivery, but now if I get the same address more than twice with the wrong address excuse, I report it immediately. And I never, ever deliver to abandoned-looking houses anymore. The customer's instructions said, knock 3 times, wait, then knock twice more. I thought it was quirky. I didn't realize it was a test to see if I'd follow orders. I started delivering for Instacart about a year ago, which is a little different from restaurant delivery since you're shopping for groceries and bringing them to people's homes. I actually preferred it because I liked the shopping part. It felt more involved than just picking up a bag and dropping it off. One Saturday afternoon, I got a large grocery order over $200 worth of items. The list was strange, though. Lots of canned goods, bottled water, protein bars, basically all non-perishable items. No fresh produce, no dairy, no frozen foods. It struck me as odd, like someone preparing for a storm or stocking a bunker, but I'd seen weirder orders before. The delivery address was for a basement apartment in an old converted house near downtown. The instructions were very specific. Knock 3 times, wait 5 seconds, then knock twice more. Do not ring doorbell. Bring groceries to basement door on side of house, not front door. I loaded up my car with probably 8 bags of groceries and drove to the address. It was an older Victorian-style house that had clearly been divided into multiple units. I could see the main entrance at the front, and then I noticed a separate side entrance with stairs going down to a basement-level door. I gathered as many bags as I could carry and made my first trip down the concrete steps. They were narrow and steep, leading down to a weathered door with peeling paint. There was a small, dirty window next to the door, but I couldn't see inside because something was covering it from the inside. Following the instructions exactly, I knocked 3 times, waited 5 seconds, then knocked twice more. Nothing happened. I waited about 30 seconds, then did it again. 3 knocks. Wait, 2 knocks. This time I heard movement inside. Then a voice, muffled through the door. How many bags? 8 total. I called back. I have 4 here now. I'll need to make another trip. Bring them all down first. Then knock the same way. Something about the voice made me uncomfortable. It was flat, emotionless, like someone reading from a script. And why did I need to bring everything down before they'd open the door? I went back to my car and brought the remaining 4 bags down, leaving all 8 sitting on the small landing by the basement door. The stairs were narrow enough that the bags were taking up most of the space. I did the knock sequence again, 3 knocks. Wait, 2 knocks. The voice came again, but this time it said something different. Are you alone? My heart skipped. That wasn't a normal question. Yes, I answered, unsure what else to say. Is anyone in your car? No, I'm alone. It's just me. Look behind you. Is anyone on the street? I turned and looked up the stairs toward the street. It was a quiet residential area, middle of the afternoon, but I didn't see anyone walking by. No one's there. There was a long pause. Then, did you follow the knock pattern exactly? Yes, 3 knocks. Wait, then 2 knocks. Just like the instructions. Another long pause. I was starting to feel very exposed standing at the bottom of those stairs. If I needed to run, I'd have to get past all these grocery bags and up steep, narrow steps. Then I heard multiple locks being undone, at least 3 or 4 different locks clicking open. The door opened just a crack, maybe 6 inches, and I saw a chain lock was still engaged. Through the gap, I couldn't see the person at all. They were standing back in the darkness. Slide the bags through, the voice said. They won't fit through that gap, I said. You'll need to open the door more. No, take the items out of the bags and slide them through one at a time. This was getting really weird. That's going to take forever. There are like 50 items here. Can you just open the door? No. The voice was sharp now, aggressive. Follow instructions. Take items out and slide them through. I backed up a step. I'm not doing that. I'll leave the bags here and you can take them inside yourself. You need to bring them inside. That's your job. My job is to deliver them to your door, which I did. I'm leaving. I turned to go back up the stairs, and that's when I heard the chain lock slide off. The door opened wider, not all the way, but enough that I could see inside now. What I saw made me freeze on those stairs. The basement apartment was completely empty except for a single folding chair facing the door. And sitting on that chair, holding a phone to record me, was a man wearing a mask. He didn't say anything, just sat there recording. I could see behind him that the walls were covered with photos and papers. Even from that distance, I could tell they were pictures of different people, delivery drivers, based on their uniforms and the bags they were holding. I ran up those stairs faster than I've ever moved in my life. I got to my car, threw it in drive, and took off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I called Instacart support while driving and told them everything. They told me to go straight home and that they were deactivating that customer's account and contacting the police. I also called the police directly and filed a report. Later that evening, a police officer came to my apartment to get my full statement. They told me they'd gone to that address, and the person who lived there had dozens of recordings of delivery drivers, along with their license plate numbers, photos of their cars, and in some cases, information about their routes and schedules. They found notes about which drivers seemed most compliant and which ones asked too many questions. They arrested the man for stalking and harassment and found he had prior arrests for similar behavior. The police said I did exactly the right thing by leaving when I did. They believed he was escalating and might have been planning something worse. The thing that haunts me most is that knock pattern. He was training drivers to follow his commands, testing who would obey unusual instructions without question. I passed his test by following the knock pattern, but failed whatever his next test was supposed to be by refusing to unpack the groceries one by one. I don't want to know what would have happened if I'd passed that test too. I still do Instacart, but now if I see overly specific instructions, especially about knocking patterns or entering buildings in unusual ways, I cancel the order immediately. And I never, ever go down to a basement apartment alone anymore. Some instructions aren't quirky, they're red flags.